Alright guys, we got a new game with the white pieces against Grand Atlas Master 917. We open up with c4 on move 1. He responds with e5, the reverse Sicilian. We're going to play g3 and fianchetto our bishop and control this long diagonal. He's going to immediately put his second pawn in the center, which opens up both of his bishops. He's threatening to take my pawn. One of the drawbacks though is that if I take him, he doesn't have a minor piece to recapture with. And bringing the queen out, what is the threat? It attacks my rook. What is the drawback? Eventually I can hit it with a knight, but right now my rook is hanging. If I bring my knight out and he hits my knight and I hit his queen and he just goes back, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring my knight out so I could fianchetto my bishop. He attacks my knight. This is the threat of his move. If I just move my knight, he can push the pawn somewhere and attack my rook. So instead I'm going to develop another piece and counter threat, and my threat's bigger and more important, so he's supposed to respond to my threat, and that way I don't lose my knight. But instead he takes my knight and resigns the game because obviously his queen is hanging. So we get a free 8 points, and just within a couple of moves, I didn't do anything but bring my knights out to the most natural squares and they hang a queen. I didn't do anything to deserve that. They just throw their queen away. So we have another game against Dibhat 923. We're gonna try to open up with 1c4 and see what happens. This guy has 15 seconds, 14, 13, 12. Okay. He aborted the game, so I'm going to find a new opponent. Okay, now we have the black pieces against Vaz HD. He opens up with the king's pawn. Oh, I mouse slipped. I meant to go 1d6, but I guess we're playing a Scandinavian. Good thing he didn't take, because I've never played the Scandinavian, so I don't know how to play it. But since he didn't take, now I can take or push. So, okay, now we're back in okay territory where we can manage. If he took the pawn, I wasn't going to take with the queen like a regular Scandi. I was just going to develop my knight and try to take it back that way, but since I don't know theory, in this case, I'm just going to kick the knight. You could take the pawn, but kicking the knight seems nice because it doesn't have good squares. He goes off to the side. It doesn't threaten anything, and the drawback is that it's misplaced, so if I attack it, it won't really have good squares. But for right now, I'm going to put my second pawn in the center, solidify this. Both my bishops are open. He tries to immediately bite into my center to reduce my space advantage that I have. That's the threat. The downside, well, his knight's almost trapped if I could play b5 because it doesn't have any squares, but the bishop could take it. Another downside by moving this pawn is it weakens these light squares. So just like in another speedrun video game, I'm going to go d3, and it's protected by the queen. And so in that other game, you saw that he was unable to move any of his pieces because this pawn on d3 was stifling his whole army. But in this game, white immediately on move 5 blunders a piece, takes the pawn. I guess he doesn't see it's protected by the queen. And I'm just going to take the free bishop. And now my queen acts like the pawn, stifling the development of his pieces because he can't move the d pawn forward. And so this is really annoying when he can't move the pawn from d2 to d4, which is a desirable structure. So he doesn't really know what to do. He knows he can't develop the bishop this way because the pawn is blocked, so he figures he'll go the other way. If he's going to do that, he should have moved it one square so you can create, you're not covering the dark squares with your pawns. But okay, what's the threat? No threat. What's the downside? He's moving pawns and not pieces, and it doesn't get him closer to castling. So same thing every game. Another downside is this pawn is hanging with check. I could develop pieces like a normal development that's solid, but it's a free central pawn. It does come with check and threats. If no matter what he does, I'm still up a piece. He doesn't have anything developed with this knight, which can't do anything because I could snap it. So this is reasonable. If he had, let's say, 3 pieces out, like his knight was developed, his bishop was out somewhere, then I wouldn't do this. But since he can't punish me, I might as well take it with check. He blocks with his knight. There's no threat. The drawback is his pawn is still hanging. Do I want to take it? I kind of want to be greedy. That way he can't really castle. If I don't take it, he's going to castle. Because he's so poorly developed and he has absolutely no way to make a threat in the next move, I am going to take it, which comes with the threat of the rook, and now he can't really castle this way or this way. I thought he was going to move his rook over, but instead I guess he moves his knight, which defends the rook, so he doesn't lose castling rights, I imagine. The drawback is that, well, his knight's tied down to the rook. He still can't castle with my queen here. And now he can't kick my queen, where he could have with his knight here, so. And now I get a free move. I can develop, I imagine. I'm just going to bring my knight out. This looks just like a normal developing move, which it is, but it also comes with a threat. It's like, well, how does this come with a threat? It's weird, right? But the threat is, well, this queen is attacking this rook. This rook is defended by this knight. If I can deflect the knight, let's say h4, h5, h4, if he has to move the knight, he'll lose the rook. But I can do that with this piece, right? I could just throw my piece literally anywhere on pre, let it hang. If he takes it, then I win the rook, right? So it looks like a regular developing move, but it's actually a sneaky. It is a developing move, but it comes with a sneaky threat. And white goes d3, opening up the diagonal for his bishop. It's a reasonable move. The drawback, I would say, is it doesn't really address the queen situation. And now I can't go here because he can take with the pawn, and I can't go. I can't actually go here this turn because he can take with the queen. However, I can develop a piece now that it's supported by the knight, hitting the queen. He can't interpose with the pawn because I can take it. So that forces him to move his queen, and then once he moves his queen, I can have, more domination on light squares. Then I can chuck my knight in and try to win his rook. I'm bringing more pieces in with threats and tempos. Tempi. And his pieces are not so good. This guy's on the rim with no prospects. This guy's purely defensive, and that's all he has out. He has a bunch of weaknesses. So he moves his queen. What's the threat? Well, no threat. You just got to watch the diagonal. The drawback is he was forced to move the queen. It's not like he wanted to. He's not developing minor pieces. And now it's my turn to move again. We could go with our plan of hitting the knight. But if, theoretically, if he just moves the rook, and I take the knight, and he takes, I don't know, in some way. Well, he would have to take with the h pawn because this would be checkmate, and then I still have threats, so whatever. I could also develop a piece. Developing is perfectly normal, right? But I think I'm gonna go with I don't know. Maybe there's some sneaky move he has, some resource I'm not taking into account fully, but I'm gonna go for it anyway. Of course, this you're up a piece, so the obvious safe way to play this is to bring your bishop out and castle, and then bring your knight out, and then go on adventures, moving pieces twice and stuff. That's what I recommend for you guys. Move each piece once, castle, especially when you're guaranteed to win because you're up a piece. Now I'm wasting time trying to pursue my plan, but if I overlook a resource of whites because my king's in the center, um, maybe I could run into trouble. That's the philosophy behind it, but concretely, that might not be the case. And I didn't see it concretely, so that's why I went for it. So he moves his rook out of harm's way, like I predicted he would, so that's nice. And now I'm going to switch my diagonal of my bishop here. And the reason I keep moving the same piece twice is because they keep coming with threats. So that changes things. I'm going to go here. What does this threaten? Well, if I take his knight, I'm not threatening to win his rook again, right? So knight takes knight. However he takes back, I win the rook. If he moves the rook back, I take the knight, take the rook. He can't move the rook here because it hangs. If he moves the knight again anywhere, the rook hangs. So, and he can't protect the rook with any pieces. No queen, no knight can touch it. So that's why I'm moving the same piece twice because it comes with threats. So now he takes my knight because he sees no other option. He knows he can't defend the rook. I'm going to take the rook. Okay, fine. But the problem is his king is still weak, so it's not just like I won an exchange, right? Because it's my turn again. He has to run with his king, but it's trapped by his own pieces. So I'm going to take this pawn with check, saying you're forced to go here. Now, if you give checks with the queen, you actually let him escape into these cubby holes. So I'm going to leave the queen here because you don't want him to go back and escape. And then I'm going to deliver the check mate with the bishop now that the king is completely trapped. And if it wasn't checkmate, you'd win the knight, but checkmate's a lot better. So I want to say that's game 2, 3. I don't know. Somebody left. Somebody resigned on like move 1. So we have another game with our first person over 1,000. Oh, I think this is the guy who abandoned it before. Whoops. Oh, he abandoned it now. I don't know. Vidal. This is a familiar name. I feel like we've faced this person. Maybe. Rated 955. We go c4 and they respond again with e5 on move 2. Reverse Sicilian. Controlling the center. Okay, so now he goes c5 as well as e5. What this does is it puts a really nice clamp down on d4, but the drawback is that now none of his pawns can protect the d5 and d6 squares. So those are weaknesses that I'm going to try to take advantage of, especially since he moved his pawn too. I'm going to put my bishop on the long diagonal, and now it's slicing through the center, and there's nothing he can really do about that. So that's nice for me. He develops a knight behind the c-pawn, defending his e-pawn. That's a good developing move. Comes with no immediate threat, no immediate drawbacks. So I'm just going to develop my knight behind my c-pawn in a similar fashion, and the d5 square, which I have 3 pieces coordinating on. He goes d6, protecting his pawn center, opening up the diagonal for his light square bishop. So far, very solid play from him. The one thing that I would say is he created this hole, which is strategically undesirable for him and desirable for me. I can continue developing. There's no way I'm ever really going to push d4. So I'm just going to go d3 and open up the diagonal to develop this bishop. He brings out another minor piece. aims it towards the d5 square. Um, and that's fine. It supports the center, it develops a piece. No real drawback other than it unprotects b7, but you can't really take advantage of that, I don't think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play e3. And the point behind this is the most important square, d5 for me, and I want to always have a piece there. Eventually I'm going to put my knight in here, and he's going to have to take with a bishop or a knight, and I want to replace that knight with another knight. So I'm going to try to get these knights on this circuit so they can support each other, as opposed to putting it on f3 this game. Also, this e3 pawn protects from his knight jumping into d4. So he tries to remove his weakness and remove the hole by pushing the pawn. That is a strategy to remove the weakness, right? So that's a good idea by him. The downside is that in this specific case, I have 3 pieces protecting that square, and so in this case he loses the pawn. So you get rid of the weakness, but at the cost of the pawn. So this wasn't the right timing for him to do it. So I'm just going to take the pawn. Another downside is that it loses a piece because of the unfortunate placement of his minor pieces. Now you could take back with the knight and you're better. You could take back with the bishop and you're better. But if you take back with the pawn, it forks 2 minor pieces and now you win a piece. So you're not just better, the game is over. Right? In the other lines, he could put up some type of resistance. You'll still lose against Stockfish. But in this line, you could take with the bishop, you could take with the knight. I'm going to take with the knight and leave my bishop in its beautiful spot. You know, in this position, I mean, you might lose against Stockfish, but you might win. Okay, so he develops a piece and contests my beautiful piece in the center. There's no way to support this with another piece other than queen b3. What do I think about that? Well, I think I'm up a piece. So I'm going to take his knight. He can ruin his pawn structure, which he does. I could take this knight and ruin his pawn structure again. Normally you want to keep this bishop, but I'm just going to chuck it because I'm up an entire piece, and because of all these weaknesses. I thought he was going to take, and then I was going to start attacking his weaknesses like this, or like this, right? Hitting this pawn and this pawn, or this pawn and this pawn. But he doesn't even take. He just moves his king, which is, now he's just trolling because he gave up, obviously. So this is dumb. But I'm just going to go back in the cubby hole. I could take this pawn, but I don't even want to give his rook an open file because it's not worth a pawn. What happens is his rook goes from hitting 1 square to hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the 1 point of material you gain with the pawn is counterbalanced by the quality of his piece. Like if his rook was worth, let's say, I don't know, 3 here, by removing this pawn, it definitely goes up by 1. So you winning a pawn doesn't actually do anything. So he moves his rook over. That probably didn't make sense to you guys, but and he defends his pawn. He's still hanging this pawn, but I don't care. I'm gonna get my pieces out. I'm gonna develop my queen. Kinda eye some triangle around his king. Box him in a bit. Okay, so he moves his pawn, so I don't take it with check with my queen. But the drawback is there's no threat, and it's a complete waste of time because now I just get to bring out more pieces. Fine. I'm just going to develop my knight. If I go here, the prospect would be putting it on f5. If I go the way I went, the prospect would be putting it on d5 or maybe b5. You can go either way, but I decided just to leave my bishop unblocked because it looks so cool. He brings his bishop to the side, which I guess you can call a developing move, but is it though? At which point I'm just going to improve my knight and head for one of these central squares. It now coordinates beautifully with my other pieces, and now I control all the light squares in the center. Very nice. Or even on the board. And I may not have anything past the third rank, right? But I'm also playing an opening that is not so aggressive. You're not trying to checkmate the king. Okay, so anyway, what just happened? I moved my knight, right? The drawback of my move was that my queen no longer defends this pawn. He takes my pawn with the queen. The drawback of this is that he's moving his queen. He's wasting time that he may not have. So how do we respond? Well, we do want a castle. We don't really want his queen here. We can kick it out with our bishop a couple ways. Let's go here, just because I'm really curious to see where he puts his queen, as well as it stays on this diagonal, but now is also on another diagonal, so it's even stronger, and he can't kick it with a pawn. I could park it. You know, there's nothing really going on this diagonal anymore. He moved everything off of it, so now my bishop is just strong everywhere. Like anywhere it goes, it's strong. So he moves his queen back. I am going to castle so that my king is safe, and I can throw a rook here since his queen is just directly in the line of fire. Bring another piece into the game with tempo. Of course, another option, let's say, would be put your queen in the center, offer the queen trade. You're up 2 pieces, right? So now if you put your rook here and he sacks a queen, he gets a rook, you get a queen. He gets a knight, you get a rook. That's not worth it for him. If he moves the queen out of the way, we now have the option of a rook trade, or we can just develop our bishop. So he moves his queen and offers a queen trade all on his own, as well as offering the rook trade. Because we're up a bunch of material, you could trade whatever you want, but just for fun and giggles, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should. I'm gonna put my bishop here, which threatens the queen. He can't take with anything because I have too many pieces. He'll just lose stuff. And I can cement it in the center now with e4, meaning my position is way more overwhelming than before. And now, because he can't contest these light squares, I'm just gonna do what I want with them. Hop around, get my queen in. Like, I could do whatever I want. I have a blank check on these light squares. And now he's thinking he has to move his queen again, but maybe here? Maybe here? I mean, if he goes this way, he's going to open up the rook, so maybe he'll go to the right. Oh, he does walk into the line of sight of the rook again, so maybe I have a cool discovery, which hits the queen. I mean, I have a free pawn, so let's take this pawn, which is defended by the queen. We'll we'll take away some of the cover around his king. So he moves his rook to attack my bishop, which he's threatening to win. The drawback is my move was a discovered attack, right? So if you just look at the move visually, you say, oh, bishop. If your eyes just follow the bishop, that's all you're going to look at. But my real threat is the rook, right? So when I take this, he moves his rook but doesn't address the real threat. Of course, I'm going to take the queen with check. I don't even lose the bishop because now I can come in with check with my queen, as well as other squares, which might be more accurate. Here, yeah, probably. I imagine, I'm not calculating at all, but this just looks strong because you can bring your knight in with check if he does this. I mean, there's probably a mating sequence, but I don't feel like calculating a mating sequence. Just bring your pieces in, doesn't matter. You see, now he's on a dark square, so he's trying to be annoying, but I think we can take this. If he takes, we go check. He goes over, we go check. So his king is too weak, and these guys don't actually protect him. So it's as if he has, make believe he had no pieces on the board. If he didn't have 2 rooks and a bishop, and you're in this position, would you sack your knight for this pawn? if he didn't have any pieces, only pawns. You probably would, right? Or you would probably just do something simpler, but you get the point of what I'm trying to say. He takes back, I give this check, he's forced to go over, I'm pre-moving this, his king is stuck, he has to block with the rook, pre-move, checkmate. So hopefully you guys learned a couple things. They're gonna get stronger as we keep climbing, but most of you aren't high rated, so take what you can from these games. I don't know. Submit your games in my Discord. Goodbye.